Welcome to Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast with Colin, McDougall, and Richard Zokol.
Hey, welcome everybody to Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast with me, Colin McDougall, and my very good friend, former PGA Tour winner, or I guess all-time PGA Tour winner, and great guy, Richard Zokol. How are you, Richard?
I'm good, Colin. I'm good. Good to be with you again. Looking forward to this. We're getting our launch, building our community, and you were at the golf show.
Yes. I arrived late last night here to Orlando. For those of you who don't know, every year there's a giant, and I say giant, golf show here in Orlando, Florida. It's hard to imagine the scale and that there's this much attention and focus on golf, but it is an enormous show. You can walk the show all day, every day for 3 days straight and not see the same booth twice. It is that large.
And is it 1 million square feet? Over 1 million square feet? What was that number?
I don't know. It's amazing, and every possible idea around golf that you've ever thought of, it's there. So I'm very much looking forward to it. It's great to see old friends. Obviously, I've been going to the show many years, and it's also great to see sort of what's on the cusp. What's new equipment-wise, what are the new trends, and I look forward to sort of updating everybody next week on what I was able to take in and what we should look forward to in 2026 in golf.
Absolutely. Looking forward to hearing what has to, seeing old people there, the original golf manufacturers, everyone who has anything to get involved with golf is there, and it's quite a remarkable event.
Yeah. And there's always a few names. I saw Lee Trevino there last year. I saw a few other, I saw Matt Fitzpatrick there, I think it was. And so there's usually a few stars that roll through there on behalf of the companies they work for. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I should point out one other thing. I am actually going to speak at the PGA show. I'm giving a workshop with my friend Dean Anderson, who he and I have a workshop on improv comedy and its application in club services. So it's going to be a lot of fun on Thursday. We are back to the golf season, Richard. Isn't that good? We're getting pro golf. We just finished the
Sony Open of Hawaii.
Sony Open of Hawaii, yes. Chris Goddard won, but I guess bigger picture, we're back on the fairways playing pro golf. So any thoughts from this week on the tour?
Well, sure. I mean, giddy up, got her up. I mean, wow, this guy is impressive.
Yeah.
He's from New Jersey. Yeah. He's a powerful, big kid. He looks more. He's from New Jersey. He looks more like he's a Nebraska corn-fed bull.
Yeah.
He's strong, powerful, and smart as well. Very impressive. I mean, he was hitting some shots. The golf course plays very tricky. I know it quite intimately. And how he was bombing the ball 380 yards on a couple ones. And then he has the maturity to hit iron off the 18th hole. If everyone remembers the 18th hole, if you hit it over 230 yards, and which is, downwind, and you're going through the fairway, and everyone, no matter how good a tee shot you hit, it's going through the fairway. But Chris Goddard pulls out an iron. Hits it about 230, short of the trouble, then he laid it up perfectly, and he earned this win. It's his third win in 12 months. So, as I mentioned, giddy up, got her up. We're going to listen. We're going to hear a lot of things about him in the future.
Yeah, he absolutely flushes. And I should point out for our friends and listeners, you, Richard Zokol, if I recall correctly, you had a good finish in Hawaii.
I did.
Was it second place?
I finished second to Lanny Watkins in 1988, and it was kind of an interesting story to it because it was the third time that I was in the final group. I call that walking the gauntlet, and I was still learning how to deal with that anxiety of being in the leading the tournament and all that kind of stuff. Right. And it's a big learning experience on the tour. So I decided to not look at the scoreboard because being an anxious guy, when I see myself up at the scoreboard at that time, it got me too excited. I need to calm down. So I didn't look at it. I remember the last few holes. I figured the last hole actually hit the perfect tee shot around the corner. I can hit the green in two, and I think I have at least a one-shot lead. And I say to my caddy, keep in mind, I did not look at the scoreboard the whole time. And I said, what do we need to make to win? I'm thinking he's going to say, we need a par or a birdie to win. And he says to me, we need to make eagle to tie. And I had this letdown. Lanny Watkins got in. He was in the third to last group. Didn't really watch him, but made birdie on the last hole and finished second. So it was a big step in my career to make $64,000 at the time, which was a lot of money, second place alone. And but have fond memories. They've been playing PGA Tour at Waialae since 1965. So it's some 40 years. So it's a landmark PGA Tour facility.
Yeah. Well, that's a great story. I mean, and maybe that, for this week, we with this podcast, Tough Lies, we're definitely aiming to try to have a high level discussions around sort of subjects that maybe might people might shy away from, but it's hard, I think, to think of anything more important to talk about this week than sort of the broader things going on with the PGA Tour.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, and there's all kinds of implications. But maybe before we get into that sort of broader discussion, one other sort of thing that came across the radar, and I was very interested to hear your opinion on this, was Vijay Singh. Vijay Singh, he obviously, won 30 plus times on the tour, world number one, all that. He's 62 years old, and there's a rule in the PGA Tour rule book where if you have a certain status in terms of winning and ranking and so forth, you can have effectively a year on the tour. And he's chosen to take it. And a lot of people are upset because the feeling is he's taking a spot that away would somehow be someone else's new upstart high potential player. And he's sort of watering down the product because he's too old to play well. So I'm curious. I mean, I have my own point of view, but I was very curious from your perspective where you land on Vijay Singh and his choice to play on the tour this year.
Well, I went to Vijay's support side and battle on his side. He is one hell of he's a good friend of mine. He's been a very good friend for a long time, and this guy has played in over 600 PGA Tour events. He's won 32 times, I believe it is, and 28 times second place. And there is a stipulation that if you're in the top 50 career money list, like he is like second on the money list on career earnings, so he's paid his dues. Mike Weir used his top 50 on the money list for an exempt year when he did. Yep. Vijay hasn't had to use it, and this year he did. So I'm of the opinion, a very strong opinion, that he has earned his place. He deserves it. And the spot that he's going to take away, anyone in the whole world who's interested in golf, they can go ahead and sign up for the PGA Tour, and he's earned every single bit of his ability to make the top 50 money list and use that exemption that's available to him, and he did. So I'm glad he made the cut. 62 years old. He's quite the specimen of being able, we all know him as such a hard worker, but he absolutely deserves to play if he wants to.
Yeah. Well, I think to reinforce your point, I believe our friend Colin Morikawa didn't make the cut. Keegan Bradley, Ryder Cup captain, didn't make the cut. There's some decent names that were heading home.
There's always that. I mean, the cut on the PGA Tour is just a kind of measurement of how deep the great players are in the PGA Tour, and if you start to slip, and now particularly with the exempt category dropping from down to 100 from 125, it's getting more condensed. The competition, the players are getting better, and we all know what that means. That means it's going to be tougher and tougher to get to a point, where you better. Like I watched, Colin Morikawa had about an 8-foot putt for birdie on the last hole, and if he makes it, he's going to make the cut. If he misses, he's going to miss the cut. So he missed the putt, and he knew he was going to miss the cut. And he was pretty upset over this. So making cuts is extremely meaningful to everyone on the PGA Tour, no matter if you're a journeyman or if you're a star player.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I guess my point of that would be, Vijay was playing on the weekend, and some of the top players in the world were heading home.
He's still earning it.
He earned his way, and I think, and I would say, I think there's a motto on the tour. The simple answer is just play better. And so if you were the the 100, if you were the 101st and you didn't get in because Vijay Singh took your spot, well, you should have been better. And there's certainly a logic to that. So, okay, well, I think I'm very, very interested. There's so much that's happening with the PGA Tour. And there's lots of different aspects, but maybe let's sort of parse it out. There's one of the things I would think we would want to talk about is, the return of Brooks Koepka, but in the larger picture, the player returning program, the PGA
returning
Tour.
members program.
Returning members program,
yes.
Yeah.
So I think that,
so it's quite something, when you read it. So for context, there is a narrow criteria through which only a very select few former PGA Tour members, all of 4 well-known names, even qualify to be eligible for this program. It's got a hard deadline, I believe, of February the 2nd.
That's right.
And so we'll know whether those other 3 are coming back or not. But Brooks Koepka has decided to take advantage of this opportunity, and he's returning to the PGA Tour after having a lifetime ban foisted upon them all for moving over to LIV. So first of all, let's talk about that program and what we think it means for the tour looking ahead.
Well, Brian Rolap, who is the new CEO of the PGA Tour, just made this brilliant move. Now, keep in mind, as of this week, this past week, the PGA Tour is a for-profit company. 180 degree turn from last year when the PGA Tour. So there's going to be a different perspective moving forward, period. So Brian Rolap just played a card that is going to just, he's quarterbacking the PGA Tour. And when word got out in early December that Brooks Koepka wanted to come back to the PGA Tour, Brian Rolap was all over it. So him and his team created what's called the Returning Members Program. So, I'm a member of the PGA Tour. There's a lot of people who've had, good careers, and they're members of the PGA Tour. And then alongside the Player Equity Program on the PGA Tour. So the Returning Player Program is, as you mentioned, it's for a small window, a small group of people. So if you have won a major championship since 2002 to 2005, you are eligible for, and if you're on playing for LIV, you can take advantage of this Returning Members Program. It's only good for 4 people: Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau, Cam Smith, and
John Rahm.
John Rahm, yeah. Even though someone like, let's take Bryson DeChambeau, maybe he said he's not going anywhere. Who knows what's going on under the table? So we'll find out on February 3rd if anything happens. So basically, what they said, this is a one-time window. It closes on February 2nd. So in this situation, Brooks Koepka has to pay LIV to get out of that $30 million. Then he has to pay $5 million to a charity that the PGA Tour designates. Brooks cannot participate for 5 years in the Player Equity Program. He cannot play in any signature series of events. He can't gain any sponsor exemption. He can, if he earns his way into them, then he can play. And most importantly, and for a lot of players, is he's not going to take a spot for anyone on the tour. So they're going to add him to the tour, which means if they're playing threesomes on a new, you'll add one more threesome, so 2 more people would get in. Otherwise, they would not. So that's what's happening. He is paying a big penalty, and the thing I like so much about it is, with him coming back, he's creating so much equity value, and that's what Brian Rolap's goal is to increase shareholder value, and he's not going to earn anything for 5 years. So I think it's a great start. People may not like it because they feel that he may not have been faithful to the PGA Tour, type of thing, like a marriage, and now he wants to come back. So a lot of people are saying, forget you son of a gun, not interested. But now, because it's all about business and return on investment, this is a smart move for the PGA Tour, and it's brilliant for Brian Rolap.
Yeah. So I have a few thoughts on it. I was going to tell a story. When I was young, I had a younger sister, and her name was Anne, and when we were kids, she had a card game, and it was called Sinky Sonk. And to play Sinky Sonk, you basically, she made up the rules as she went along so that she would win every time. Okay. So it was like, you'd flip a card over and my ace would, in theory, be more valuable than her 7, but she would say, well, it's Tuesday, so the 7 actually is more valuable on Tuesdays, and that sort of thing. And no matter what you did, she had a thing where so you could never win a game of Sinky Sonk with my sister. Okay. And so it was really, to me, it feels very much like they're making this sort of returning members program, particularly to exclude somebody like a Phil Mickelson. Yes. It's a very specific criteria. There's lots of other players not getting back, but it seems like it's really like they want some, but not all, and there's some grudges still being held there. And I'm not sure, I guess in the spirit, if you're about what's good for the game, quote unquote, I'm not sure that this sort of rings true in terms of what they're doing. It seems very, sort of arbitrary. And the deadline that they put up, I am pretty sure if John Rahm comes and knocks on the door 6 months from now or a year from now saying I'd like to return, there will be a new returning members program or a reissuance of it. Because as long as it helps them and their top line revenue and bottom line, because like you said, it's a for-profit company, which I think is a whole other discussion and a worthwhile one. But for me, that they had to devise this program in the first place, to me, is
here's something that put the framework together. Number one, and it's a returning members program. Phil Mickelson gave up his membership, so he's no longer a member. So there's that aspect of it.
Right.
And also, Phil was part of the group that sued the PGA Tour. Yeah. Brooks Koepka was not. So I think those two things kind of set the framework. I think Brooks never said anything bad. He never wore their logo, so he was kind of there. He played it smart. Phil, unfortunately for him, couldn't keep his mouth quiet and went out there and started blasting the PGA Tour. Right. He's trying to recuperate from that. So I think he's at a point where he can't return, just simply because there are a couple of reasons: his age and so forth, and the distraction that he would be. Whereas Brooks Koepka is actually bringing value.
Yeah. So, well, I think.
But you're right. I think that if it's a year from now, and John Rahm wants to come back, even though they said this will not set precedent. They will make up a new one. Yeah. I think you're right.
We're not doing it. It's a one-time offer until we have another time to offer it. It's
the art of the deal. They're negotiating.
Yeah, exactly. But I get your point. It's like Brooks was a participant in the crime, but it was a misdemeanor, whereas Phil is more of a felony.
And I think if we use the analogy that kind of like a marriage and someone left and you're talking about fairness and all this, and this guy left for a prettier lady, so to speak, and you leave your wife for a pretty lady, and then you decide to come back a couple of years later. It's got nothing to do with business. It's got everything to do with morality, and she's not going to let you back. Simple as that. And so, but this is, like I mentioned, this is business. This isn't about fairness. Yeah. This isn't about morality. Business has got nothing to do with morality, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, well, my only thought would be, I think, big picture, if, for example, they did say, Mickelson, you can come back. Mm-hmm. I don't think he would choose to, because I think that ship has already sailed. I agree with you. He withdrew his membership, and I think there's a future episodes worth of content around sort of what led to Live and all that sort of stuff. But I do think, if there was the opportunity for him to play on the tour regularly, he's a draw.
Sure,
And he's,
sure,
you know,
sure.
and there would be additional revenues, which if you're a for-profit organization, in theory, you should be in favor of.
Yeah, and one other thing I want to add that Brooks is giving up, he's not eligible for the player equity program, even though he's contributing to player equity value. He's playing in it, which is putting money in the pockets of other tour players. He's not eligible to receive any benefits from the player equity program for 5 years. And they're speculating that that's a value between $50 and $80 million that Brooks has to. Well, it's not. He's not losing it because he never had it, but it's potential money he's leaving on the table.
Yeah,
and that's fair ball.
Yeah, it's fair ball. No, I think it's not. I agree. It's not without sort of. He's coming back and he's paying some degree of a price for for it, but. Obviously, the bigger picture to me message is, I mean, if you don't come away from this thinking, well, have we seen the end of the live experiment? Like, is this the turning point at which people go, you know, they tried, but as soon as one of the biggest marquee players comes back more or less hat in hand to rejoin the tour and is willing to do the things that like he's doing in order to sort of go back to where he originated from a professional golf standpoint, it doesn't bode well, I think, in terms of forward-looking prospects for live golf.
Well, yeah, they they made some announcements recently, new announcements, but those announcements hasn't added value. It's like, okay, who are they? They're not moving the needle. So, and then with Roll App making this play, you know, in the past, I guess, call it the last 2 months, December and now into January, that this is a positive move for the PGA Tour and a negative move for the Live. But you know, we'll have to wait and see how this continues. I want to see what's happening on February the 3rd.
Yes, exactly. Mark your calendars. Should be interesting.
Today's episode of Tough Lies is brought to you by Fairway Foresight, the AI-powered digital caddy, yardage, and strategy app for golfers who want to stop making the same mistake every single round. Fairway Foresight doesn't just give you a number, it analyzes your patterns, your shot tendencies, their dispersion, and decision making. And then it shows you what you should do, not what you wish would happen. If you ever thought, I probably shouldn't hit driver here, and hey, who hasn't? But I'm going to hit driver anyways, this app is the one for you.
So moving on, discussion-wise around things going with the PGA Tour, I think one of the other elements that merit some degree of discussion is Brian Rolapp's intentions regarding the schedule and
contraction.
And contraction. With the premise of his argument for contraction is it's going to be less is more.
Yes.
We can't compete with the NFL. So why put ourselves in a position where we're sort of the ugly stepchild from a TV content standpoint? Let's start off the season after the Super Bowl is over. Let's have 22 very select high value events. So there's no sort of different levels that there once were between signature events and so forth. Let's sort of run a tighter 22 week schedule. And I'm curious sort of, you know, what you think of that as a strategy, and then obviously there are implications for, you know, all the events that we would normally see, like in Hawaii and so forth, that would appear to have, you know, be something that will no longer be. So where do you land on all that, Richard?
Yeah. I mean, everyone understands the concept and acceptance of less is more. I mean, that's a good saying that everyone uses. I'm not so sure. I mean, when you contract, you have smaller events and fewer events, and that it increases the value. Okay, I do understand that, but there's this goodwill that you're going to be losing or walking away from, particularly in Hawaii. You know, you look at the blizzards that are going on in Boston, New York, and all the way down the eastern seaboard right now. And when you know, we're watching PGA Tour golf at the Century in Maui, and you're watching these whales breach in your palm trees and on the beach in Honolulu for a couple of weeks, the envy that's going on is like it is valuable. So I'd like to see a couple of these. I'd like to see these two events stay and work around and try and avoid, obviously, Super Bowl Sunday. There's no question that going up, you will not win that battle going up against the NFL. But I think it's obvious they have an argument that it's very expensive. They got to ship and barge over all the equipment and the cost. Well, you know what? There's $5 million from Kepka that's coming in. Well, instead of giving it to charity, so why don't you send it to the Hawaiian Open and the Century so they can be cost effective.
They can send it over in Kepka's yacht, you know.
There you go. You could pull a barge over in there.
Sorry, go ahead.
So, you know, I agree with it to a good degree, but I would try hard to not give up. There's goodwill in the Hawaiian Open. There's goodwill in the Tournament of Champions. There's no goodwill over in LIV, I think, because there's no meaningfulness. So there's goodwill with all the Phoenix Open, the AT&T, San Diego. There's all goodwill in there, and I think we got to be careful. And how do we bring out the best formula to maximize the value of these events? Because I still think they're going to be going out and Brian Rolapp will be, franchising all the PGA Tour events. You know, down in short order, we'll be talking about that.
Yeah, for sure. To me, there is some soundness to that logic, and part of his argument is, you know, the NFL does so well in part because there's a degree of scarcity. You know, they only play
every game is meaningful.
18 weeks with a couple of bye weeks, and you know and that heightens the demand and interest when they do play.
Yes.
My counter argument to that would be, you know, the core golfer who plays a lot, loves the games, super invested, they are the ones who are watching call it the RSM Classic or whatever you want to pick, some sort of off Broadway tour event. What are they going to do in the absence of no sort of PGA Tour product? And, you know, to me, if I were the CEO of LIV, I would be maybe considering counter programming. So the weeks that they're off, those first 4 weeks, I'd be in Hawaii running LIV events. That's one example. Number two, or to me, the other thing, I've always had this idea, but you know, and I don't know whether it's a good one or a bad one, but I've always thought that the LPGA Tour doesn't really try to fill the holes in the PGA Tour calendar with meaningful events on their calendar. Yeah. So, for example, I've always felt that the LPGA Tour, the majors that they play should have always been September to December. They would be heightened in terms of the core value, and they would get, I think, a lot more attention and focus in that time of year. There's always places to play, and I think people want the best, most meaningful golf that you can put in front of them. I think, and so to me, if I was head of the LPGA Tour, I would be same thing. I would be organizing events in Hawaii for those time windows. And people, the core golfer, I mean, it's not going to interest perhaps the broader. You know, I think part of the strategy is we want to grab the sports fan who's the occasional golf fan. You know, with our reduced schedule, and it's going to be higher impact because we're going to have the best players there. Yeah. But I think for the core golfers, you know, I think a lot of them will turn. And if you say we're going to put on, you know, one or two of the LPGA majors between December and the end of and Super Bowl, I think there will be a lot of people who will be keen to see it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, PGA Tour events it's kind of like real estate. If you own this area, that's why they went over and took a big portion of the DP World Tour. They own that area. They own that space. So if they ever get into court cases, a battle over ownership, they are proprietary position with the European Tour. It's their space. And the PGA Tour has dominated the fall and the spring. And if they walk away from it, it's going to open up space where I think I think your point is bang on. That's a good one. So let's say they walk away from January before, you know, Hawaii, and LIV goes in there. Well, you know what? I'm going to be tuning in January when it's when it's colder than hell in Canada, and Eastern Seaboard people watching it in prime time, which is very cool. I think they're going to be able to instantly grow some goodwill because the habitual golf in those seasons. So the PGA Tour will run the risk of losing their rights to that time of the calendar.
Yeah, the whales will be breaching whether it's the PGA Tour event or a live event. Right?
Exactly.
But
you can smell the coconut oil from here.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe we move from there. We were doing some pre-production notes, and I'm dying. You gave me a teaser, but I haven't heard it, and I'm dying to hear it. You have a story about Simon Hobday that you wanted to share.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if if you heard of the term is the person Simon Hobday. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, I've heard him. Yes.
So there's sorry. So last week I was rolling through X and Twitter, and I come across this video of the DP World Tour they do a marvelous job on their marketing, right? You remember what they do. So around this table, there's Bernhard Langer, Nick Faldo, Sandy Lyle, and Ian Woosnam, and they're telling stories. So Langer's telling the story about back in the day when there was no money on tour, everyone was broke. Playing the European Tour, you share rooms, so you cut the cost down. And he was open to sharing this room with this guy named Simon Hobday. He didn't know him. He knew of him, but he never met him before. Sure. Simon Hobday, hell of a good player. He won the U.S. Senior Open, but there's stories around him from South Africa. This guy's a real character. So Hobday, Langer tells the story. So he's rooming in. He comes in with his suitcase in the hotel room, and he immediately goes into the bathroom with his suitcase, fills the bathtub up, and he empties his suitcase into the bathtub. Socks, pants, sweaters, everything goes into... And this isn't the story. This is the one one of the stories. And he throws a couple of bars of soap on he unravels the paper, throws it in the bathtub. Then he gets his one iron. He's in there and he's churning up the bathroom. And Langer doesn't know what to do. And so Hobday then goes, "Yeah, I've got my laundry done for the week. I'm good." So it gives you an idea about Simon Hobday. But the story about Simon Hobday is he's playing in a senior event, and he's got to make a par on the last hole to possibly get in a playoff type of thing. And he drives, the ball goes over the hill on the 18th hole, and as he walks down the fairway up to it, his ball's in a divot. And he's got to play it, obviously. So he's not happy, and he's trying to figure a way out. And he notices this French drain right behind him. And he says, "Call for a rilling. I need a PGA Tour official here. Call for a rilling." So the PGA Tour official comes over the hill. And Hobday looks and sees who it is. He goes, "Oh no, it's not him." He doesn't get along well with this PGA Tour official. So the official drives up. He sees his ball in a divot, and he goes, "Okay, Hobday, what have you got now?" And he says, "Well, I'm trying to take my stance here." And he's got his foot way splayed out to the side to get into the French drain and get a relief. And the official goes, "Come on, Hobday, I'm tired of your antics. There's no way you're not getting a ruling." And that's that. And Hobday says to him, knowing the rules on the PGA Tour, if you swear at a PGA Tour official, you're going to get fined. So Hobday looks at the official. He goes, "If I call you an asshole, will I get fined?" He goes, "Yes, you will." He goes, "If I think you're an asshole, will I get fined?" He goes, "No, you can think that all you want." He goes, "Good, because I think you're a fucking asshole." And that's Simon Hobday. There's so many Simon Hobday stories that we can talk about and we can't talk about as well. But he's a legend out there, and I was so delighted to hear Langer and the European boys talk about Simon Hobday, who played on the European Tour from the 70s and 80s and was one hell of a golfer. He was one hell of a golfer, having won the U.S. Seniors Open. But lots of stories out there, and hopefully we can tap into a couple more down the road.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. It seems like an endless supply from back then, and I think it is that sort of the shared experience. When you're trying to save money, that it creates a degree of camaraderie and relationships that to my eye, anyways, is not nearly what it was then. So everybody's got their team they're, around them. They've got this coach, that coach, the other, and they're, they've got their own bubble in which they sort of navigate the professional tour world. And I'm sure they go out and have friends with their buddies, but it's not the same when you're, getting in bar fights, or you're, four of you in a car driving for 7 hours to the next tour stop.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Actually, when you say that, it just pops up. Like there's a story of Mo Norman and Dan Halderson, and we'll get into it another time about traveling on the Canadian tour, and there's endless, and it's these discussions that trigger memories that pull out these stories buried deep in the files of our mind.
I look forward to uncovering or recovering the files along the way of this journey that is this podcast. Yeah. So moving on, I do want to move to one of the feature parts of our show. I think is you're very well renowned for your expertise around the mental side of the game, and I was curious. We're going to try each week. We have discussions sort of touch on aspects of the game and maybe see things in action on tour or wherever where it's something that's worth bringing to fore, so that the listener can really learn and grow in their ability to play the game. Yeah. So is there something this week that you saw that was that resonated with you?
I just want to promote this is the book title coming out. It's
my goodness.
Zokology, change your perspective, not your swing. You see at the bottom, I got this is the cover. It's going to be coming out in May. But thank you very much. This past week, it was pretty interesting. Robert McIntyre from Scotland, one hell of a player, won the Canadian Open, but he's out there. When you watch him, his disposition, his perspective, he's angry. He's very pissed off. He feels like the world's against him, and it's really unfortunate because the guy's talent is remarkable. So this past week in Hawaii, he says, and he came to, and this was quite honest and impressive, and you look for these opportunities. So he talked about, he broke his putter, and then he said, I have to change my attitude. And, good on him for being able to do that, because, the attitude of and I believe Robert McIntyre, I think Jordan Spieth beats himself up too much. His expectations are too high. So the idea is, Tyrrell Hatton, who talks to his driver like a drunken sailor, some of the words that he called his driver this past year, I won't even mention. So it leads to changing your perspective in golf. And if you're constantly having a low level of acceptance, meaning a bad bounce is going to make you up, you have to, if you want to be a great player, you work on your skills and all that, but mentally you have to have an extremely high level of acceptance. You know who has a high level of acceptance? Scotty Scheffler has a high level of acceptance. And he's the only one, as we talk, we're going to use him as the baseline standard because he's the guy that is doing it effortlessly, while everyone else, we who play this game, whether you're a pro or not, you're going to have far more bad shots than you will good shots. So that leads to the question is, what are you going to do about it? You better prepare for that, because if you don't, you're going to be in a cycle of misery. And I think that's where Jordan Spieth is, McIntyre, Tyrrell Hatton, and I think the average golfer is the same way. And you've got to just learn to build. And we can talk about those ways, is how you learn to accept and have zero expectations and a high level of acceptance.
Yeah, I think it's such wonderful counsel there. I would qualify myself as an average golfer. But there is that very much that element of acceptance. I hate to say how old I am, but I turned officially a senior golfer last summer, and the start of the season, I was quite literally, I was behaving like I did in my youth. I had thrown my clubs. I was slamming them. I was really upset. And then, interestingly, we were moving, so we were cleaning up the house, and my wife sort of uncovered a couple of old books, and so I popped, golf books. I sort of was reading
good golf books,
yeah. There's one. I'm going to crib from the Inner Game of Golf, but it very much speaks to what you're talking about. Which, to me, one of the lines that it said was, if you vocalized to the person you're playing with about their game the way you talk to yourself about yours,
Exactly.
what would their reaction be? And I'm like, they would walk off the course, you know,
Or get
and
into
we
a
would
fist
all
fight
be
right
friends,
there.
you know.
Yeah.
And it's around that notion of expectation. I believe I 100% that was what changed it for me, and I had a much better second half of the year, and it was
You're
accepting
right,
golf.
and I think those predominantly instructors that teach nowadays. In most cases, they didn't make it as players, so they teach. And what they do is they teach the swing. And yes, learning better swing mechanics is very important. But what the missing void out there is, how do you think? How are you going to set up to think on the golf course? And you have to have a system. I talk about it in the book, and I have a product and a system called MindTrack Golf that is designed to and have a thought protocol that allows the golfer to detach emotionally from the extrinsic results, like what it may mean to me, what others may think of me. If I make this putt, I'll make more money. Will I be a better person if I'm driving a Mercedes because now I can afford it? All these goofy things that really are meaningless. And we've got to get a handle of it, because it's all about mental health.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. So, yeah, wonderful. I'm so looking forward to touching on these segments each week, because I just think that there's so much to be gained in just people's enjoyment of the game. Yeah. Having a refreshed or a different approach. Like, who wants to go out and play for 4 or 5 hours and be miserable, right?
You're bang on. Then we have a lot to discuss.
Yeah. So wrapping up, why don't we share some of the key takeaways from the discussion today? What are your thoughts looking ahead, maybe for what we can expect out of the PGA Tour, with all of these changes that are going on, and what do you think we're in for in 2027?
Well, I want to pinpoint Chris Gotterup. I think he has really shown form where he's going to be a force to be reckoned with on the PGA Tour moving forward. He comes with it. Where like when I talked about earlier, like I had to learn how to feel comfortable in playing, walking the gauntlet when you're around the lead. This guy showed it right from the get-go when he won 3 years ago. Then last year won the Scottish Open, finished third at the British Open or the Open Championship, and now won, which was like all of a sudden, like he instantly didn't have a big learning curve. So, players like that and the contraction on the PGA Tour is going to force players to get better. The PGA Tour is going to become better from it.
Yeah. I think for me, looking ahead this year, I think a lot of the planned changes related to the PGA Tour are really set up for 2027. So this is going to be a remarkable year of transition, I think. There's going to be a lot of discombobulation, I think, as a new norm settles in. I think the implications of a for-profit PGA Tour aren't yet sort of fully going to be recognized by the golfing public. There's going to be all kinds of things that change the way things are done. And one of the great discussions we're going to have looking ahead, I think, is this notion of, PGA Tour events sort of almost being self-owned franchise opportunities where it's, where people could own, the Phoenix Open or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I think that has a remarkable set of implications too. And I think it's, we're in very challenging times, more broadly speaking, in the world, and I think, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how the PGA Tour navigates towards its sort of future vision of itself, and what the spillover effects are. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about in 2026.
It's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks very much, Richard. Thanks to our listeners. Thank you to Joe, or JP Free Agent, our producer. Thanks to Lost in Japan for providing the music for Tough Lies. And we look forward to speaking with you next week. Keep it in the fairway.
Bye for now.
Join us next week on the Golfers Podcast with Richard Zokol and Colin McDougall.